Hey everybody, welcome to another episode from Pro Engineering, and in this episode you can see the KingCab is here. As you can see, the front bumper is installed on the KingCab and the truck was absolutely spectacular at the track. This thing took a good beating, so I think now it is finally to make this thing available to anybody who is interested. There's a couple of variations, so I did want to talk about that. I'm going to pull this off and let's go ahead and install it and show you how it's done. One of the reasons why I decided to make a replacement bumper for the KingCab was mainly when I received this, I had noticed, I hope you can see here in the light, how nice this chassis is. I'm going to flip it over, and again, we're going to see that this thing has almost no wear and tear on the car, and yet, when the car came, I noticed the front bumper was kind of bent. Upon removal of the front bumper, you can see here that the front of this chassis has this big chunk broken out, and there are in fact even some stress cracks in this area and in this area. There's a couple of reasons for this. I think the main one being that this chassis is made out of a very, very rigid ABS plastic, which is good for a performance vehicle. I'm not calling this KingCab a high performance car, but when it came out, this was not targeted toward the weekend basher like the Hornet or the Midnight Pumpkin was. This one here maybe was targeted toward somebody who had a black foot and wanted to move forward with something more modern and a little bit better. The main problem was having that harder chassis results in plastic that won't take impact nearly as well. And this bumper is an excellent example of that. In fact, I'm going to pull these screws out. You're going to see that the bumper, it's got a big crack in it right there. Actually, I didn't realize it was broken all the way through. And we can see that there is damage here. And the thing is, this lower plate here, which again is an ABS plastic, is quite rigid. So oftentimes you'll find these on eBay used. If the car has been a little more heavily used, you'll find them with the front end quite damaged. And I think that also puts a lot of people off if they want to run theirs. We make mistakes, and I think even the simplest of crashes will result in some significant damage to the front of the car. Therefore, we have some options. There are three main pieces with this kit. Not all are required, so we'll walk through that, and one of these does have some options. I'm going to walk you through these parts the way you would install them. And the first part is going to be this front bumper mount. Now, it is a very peculiar shaped piece here, having a number of tubes that have some braces here, and ultimately what this is designed to do is go in the front of the vehicle like so and help to deflect that load if you do crash into something. Here's the thing though, this mount comes in two flavors. It comes in nylon, which is this one over here, and it comes in this elastoplastic. This elastoplastic has a significant amount of flex to it. And it's not like rubber, but it definitely has some flex. I haven't used this stuff too much, but as I do want to drive this thing, I really want to make sure that if I crash into something hard, that this bumper takes the brunt of the impact. Ultimately, if something fails and breaks on this truck, I want it to be this piece. I don't want it to be this piece. Here's the downside. If you want the elastoplastic one, I simply cannot put it up for sale on Shapeways because it is what they call a maker material, at least as of this time, due to the poor quality of the surface. Now, I don't think it's very bad, but it does not share the same surface quality as the SLS nylon parts. For most of you, this piece in nylon is going to be fine, and if you are interested in this, unfortunately, we have to go through a bit of a longer process where I will have to order it for you and then mail it to you. So that is a little bit annoying. Nevertheless, we are going to place this here. Now, the stock screws are actually quite amusing. I saved them specifically to show you folks here. These are the left and the right stock screws, and you can see how the tops are bent. That's quite a load to put on these little guys here. The screws that you are going to need to mount this are 28 millimeters long. Now, these are 29 millimeter. I don't know why on earth I have a 29 millimeter screw, but we'll put that in here, and that's why I've got a couple of washers on top. So a 28 millimeter screw is going to slide right in here, and I'm going to use one of these shorter Tamiya M3 nuts because you want to wedge it right between this lip here on this lower bumper, and when the screw protrudes, I have to pull it back out, but when we push this screw in here, we want it sitting right in there. Now this elastoplastic is not going to be threaded into. As usual, try and do this on camera. I don't know if I'll be capable of that. Let me just, okay. It does barely fit. It was pretty tight to do this. And we'll just screw that in place. There you go, right in. Now, with the nylon as well as the elastoplastic, do not go crazy torquing this stuff down. Give it a nice snug, final turn and be done with it. Two things will happen if you torque down the nylon. One, you're going to overstress this region over here, and worse yet, you're probably going to overstress the chassis. Don't do that. With the elastoplastic, you're going to squish out the elastoplastic and make it just bulge ever so slightly here and cause stress in areas right here and right here, which are already going to be subject to stress in the event of an impact. So just make it so that it gets in there and kind of is snug, and that's about it. Don't go too wild. I've got the screws installed on both sides. Next, I'm going to install the skid plate. So the way the skid plate works is it's going to mount to the upper hole on the sway bar mount. However, because I was limited as to what I could hook it to, it has these two little clips on top, which will slot right over this area and this area. So you basically just push it in, and this will just kind of press fit right on top of those guys, like that. Use the stock screw that was in there. Mine, I've seen a couple different variations here, so I don't know what's right and what is incorrect. I suppose I should consult the manual. Remember, always back thread. And as before, just when the screw stops, give it one little snug turn and be done with it. The last thing you want to do is strip out the plastic. With the mount and the skid plate installed, we have two options. We can use the stock bumper and install it just like so. It doesn't really give the most cosmetically appealing look to it, but it is designed to fit the stock bumper. The stock bumper will, in fact, screw right on top. I'm going to go with my front bumper, because that's why I designed it. This bumper comes in two flavors. You can use this bumper here, which has no holes on top for no auxiliary lamps. Or you have the other version here, which does have holes on top for auxiliary lamps. However, this is more of a cosmetic effect. If you put the auxiliary lamps on the bumper that you're going to be running with, a single rollover will snap off the auxiliary lights, in my opinion. That was solely done for cosmetic appeal. Therefore, since this truck is going to get run, I will use this variant of the bumper. For the screws you're going to need here, I'm going to use a couple of 12mm long M3s with a 3mm long M3 lock nut. This is the kind of lock nut with the serrated edge on the bottom of the nut. I use that for this one here because this is more of my cosmetic display version. However, for the one I'm going to put on this one here, I will use a lock nut that has the nylon insert for preventing the backing out of the nut. This part here, you can see that I installed all 4 screws, and the reason why there are 4 screw mounts is because I mentioned earlier, I don't want you to over torque these and really crush the plastic. So the best thing to do here is use all 4 with a lock nut and simply screw them down until all 4 of them are nice and snug. This will distribute the load of any kind of impact more evenly throughout this piece, as opposed to just kind of isolating them on 2 points. And that is why there are 4. There are also 2 little alignment pins, 1 and 2, which will help these line up to this piece here. Although you shouldn't need to drill any of these out like most of my designs, they may have some residual in there that you might want to just clean up a little bit. At this point here, I'm just going to get these started. I'm just going to drop that in there and give it a little push, and it's just going to drop right in. Okay, those are all in. All 4 of the nuts have been tightened. Again, just tight enough. I think once you get going here, you're going to feel what enough is. It'll be a little more straightforward with the nylon pieces, as these are pretty rigid parts. If you've purchased anything in SLS nylon or used SLS nylon before, you'll know the amount of flex that they have. This one here is going to be significantly more flexible, and I'm pretty new with this elastoplastic. I've got it here, and I've got it on a couple other pieces, as well as Superfly's rear bumper. So I'm pretty excited to try this out. I think at this point here, we need to put the body on the truck and go crash it into some walls, right? I'm just playing. There's not a chance I'm going to crash this thing on purpose. You guys are crazy thinking I was going to do that. Hilarious. But in all honesty, no, absolutely not. I'm not going to crash this thing. I had two goals with this front bumper. A, I wanted it to look sweet. And B, I did want to prevent damage to the front of the car in the event of a collision. I guarantee you that the elastoplastic or the SLS nylon is going to do that. Now, these should be by far less important than this chassis. We want these parts to be perishable over this chassis, which can range, I've seen used around $70 or $80, and new in package I've seen them go upwards of $150. These are dramatically less expensive than the chassis. Now, I don't expect this piece to break at all due to the flexibility of this here, and I have beat the heck out of this part here and had no issues. So I think overall these are going to be pretty durable. But again, we are talking about a front bumper, so please use them at your discretion, says the man with the brushless lipo setup on his KingCab. At the end of the video, you'll find a link to my Shapeways page, and earlier the part numbers were up on display. But again, the part numbers are on the screen once more, and you'll find them as well as any extra parts needed in the description. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm actually going to take this out to a skate park tomorrow. And I do have some videos coming up very soon of Project Mud Blaster at said skate park with a absolutely hilarious end to the day. Something happened that I've never seen before. I've also got a video coming up of my King Blackfoot on holiday, so that'll be neat. Let us not forget that Project Tycho Bandit is still in progress. We've got some sanding to do on this guy. There's lots and lots to cover. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. Please subscribe if you think this was interesting or ridiculous and like old cars and making them more interesting, and especially if you like them more ridiculous. I've got a lot more stuff coming up. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Ampro Engineering on both. And before you take off, please check out the band Blue Pinto. They ever so graciously allow me to use their songs in my video, and a link to their Facebook page is in the end credits. You can also find a link to Shapeways there as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you and this absolutely awesome KingCab very, very soon.